Watcher. I'm going to do a general ramble, brief one, and then pitch into what will probably be the last of my page one critiques, at least for a significant time. So I'll just go through a little bit of news here and there. This I would share the rough that Tom Roberts did for the book that Wouldn't Burn cover. It's traditional standard for artists to when they're commissioned to do a book cover to sketch up a few things and say, how about these? Or just sketch up one thing and say, how about this? And if it doesn't pass the test, then to do another. And this was Tom's sketch for the cover that we all know and love. And obviously we didn't say, oh no, go away and try something different. We said, yep, that looks good. You can work that up. So he went away and he worked up into the finished item. On the subject of the book itself, the advanced reader copies, I'll show you those in a second, are out there in the world, along with electronic copies that you can apply for on NetGalley, both netgalley.com and netgalley.co.uk. So interest is building up, and when you go on to Goodreads, you can get the book statistics for any book. If you look around, you'll find the tab, and this is just showing that that big spike there was when the cover was revealed. But these are the number of people each day who mark the book to read. It's put it in their sort of to read list. And I would encourage you all to do that. Just go on Goodreads and click on the to read. It helps in various algorithms, and it may serve to remind you that you wanted to read it at some time in the future as well. And there's like 5,000 plus of you who have decided that you're interested, so that was very heartening. And there are some reviews and ratings coming in as well. Early days, the ratings are very volatile. You know, if somebody throws in a random 1-star, that can punch it down, and you expect the early ratings often to be from people who are well disposed towards an author. So most books will start with quite a high rating, and then it's what I call a Goodreads droop sets in, that over the course of the first, say, 1,000 ratings, if you're lucky enough to get that many, the rating on any book typically declines drastically. So it might start off at, like, I don't know, something silly like 4.9, and after 1,000 ratings, it's normally quite close to 4 or below 4, and then for the next 10,000 ratings, it declines much more slowly, but still declining. And even between, say, 10,000 and 100,000 ratings, you'll get this minuscule downwards creep simply as you widen your net to people who, rather than being rabid to read the book, finally succumb to the pressure or pick one up at random off a shelf, and they're much less likely to be your sort of core demographic, and so will tend to react less favorably to the book. With my Impossible Time series, One Word Kill, Amazon published that, and they put it into a big promotion, so it was advertised in their internal algorithms and whatnot to lots of people, for which I'm very grateful, because it gave the book a huge boost at the start. But it did mean that the book was put into the hands of many people who would not just randomly have chosen to read it, and so were in general less suited as my ideal reader, and the rating on that book is, as a consequence, much lower than it would have been if it had been released in a smaller way to my core audience. But then again, I would have had fewer readers. So it's swings and roundabouts. And oh yes, I was going to show you the ARCs. So an ARC, ARC, advanced reader copy, or advanced reading copy, sorry. The readers themselves don't have to be advanced. And these are volumes that are produced to promote the book early before it's published, if you're lucky. I mean, this doesn't happen for everyone, but it happens for a lot of books that the publisher has considerable faith in, and particularly for new authors, where they're trying to sort of introduce them to a large audience. And so this is a very pretty one, and today they tend to make very pretty ones that often have the cover art on, though obviously the front of that book is not like the front of the finished product, which actually has the title and my name on it. I was just going to pluck off. Like here's an arc that Ace did for Emperor of Thorns back in the day, and because these, they like publishers obviously like to be economical about things, and back 10 years ago, the full color printing and all that just was less of a. It was more expensive to do, and so you tended to get these very sort of plain, serviceable objects, and now they tend to be quite pretty, like the ones you see there. Back down there for a second. And let's see if we can click through. Yeah, there's another angle on it. This is and there's another angle. So these are nice objects, and I don't actually have any of them yet. These ones are from Voyager, and they've gone out to some bloggers and booksellers. I should do a video on the issues of marketing and the thinking around it and the economics around it, because obviously you show pictures of these online and everyone says, "Oh, I'd like one of those," and if you give me one, I will write you a review and tell you say what I think. And I'm always saying that reviews from readers are hugely appreciated, and this is entirely true, but they tend to be appreciated in the context of they are accompanied by a book sale, whereas these have to be produced because they're in a small run, they're expensive, and then they have to be mailed out to people, and the costs involved are such that the people they have to be sent, the people they're sent to have to be people who could potentially, in quotes, move the market. That they'd have to be someone like who runs a bookshop and could order in a bunch because they think this is going to sell, or they could be bloggers or YouTubers or whatever with a large platform who, if they like the book and say so, could lead to a lot of sales rather than just one or two, because the profit margins on book sales are slim. So in order to pay back the costs of producing and sending out these arcs, you would have to have each one generate a ton of sales just to justify its own existence. So I've almost done a video there on the marketing, but my return to it in more detail at some other point. So yes, we're going to do this page one critique, and it is a page one critique of something I wrote a very long time ago. It's on my blog. I encourage you to read it on my blog rather than just listen to me do it here. My blog is still a going concern. It's had like 4 million hits on it in its lifetime. I publish fewer posts there than I used to. Like you can see, back in 2016, I did 100, and to either side of that, I'm in the 90s. And these days it tends to be in the 30s. That's partly a reflection of the fact that social media has undermined the importance of blogs to some degree, and a lot of the talk about books and the efforts of people to interest potential readers in their books happens on social media now. When I founded this blog back in 2011, social media was a much smaller concern, and so blogs were king in those days. Okay, so this book is one I wrote 25 years ago. It's the first book I ever wrote. Following it, I wrote another book quite a few years later, and then following that, I wrote Prince of Thorns, and I think it was like 5 years after writing Prince of Thorns, I actually sent it out in earnest to potential agents, and the book deal happened, and the rest is history, as was what became before. But this was not a good book. I had just been to a set of night classes on creative writing. I think it's like 1997, and the internet was in its infancy there. There really wasn't any social media. There weren't websites that I was aware of that were useful for writing, and so it was a fairly solo business. And I wrote this book and I shared it with a couple of friends, and they told me, no, this isn't very good. And that was the end of it. And all of the learning I'd had done about creative writing came from this course I'd just been on, and also, you know, my running of various games in the past, play by mail games and D&D. So there was some elements of writing in those. And I think because this was written 25 years ago, I am able to cast a fairly independent critical eye over it. I really didn't remember, I've not read it since, and I really didn't remember the contents to any significant degree. So I was fairly fresh coming to this. So let's go through it in exactly the same way that I have with all the others, except we don't need the caveats, because the only person I can offend by saying mean things about it is myself. I've got some blurb there that talks about the fact that I've got better at writing since then. I've spent 25 years spending a significant amount of my time on it each week, and I got better. And that's undeniable, that if you put the time in, your skills will improve. But it led me into a discussion there of the balance or interplay of innate talent and of training. So are you born with it, or can you get there with hard work? And there are some people out there who say, well, anyone could write. All you need to do is put in 10,000 hours, and they can make a best-selling writer out of some random person that is picked on the street. And there are other people who say, no, that's not true. You're born with it to some degree, and the practice will elevate you to some degree, but it's not. But the main chunk of that is your skill that you come to the table with, and the truth presumably lies somewhere between those two. I don't think everyone can be a great writer, in the same way that I'm tone deaf and can't tell one note from the next on the keyboard. No one's ever going to make me a great piano player, no matter how much effort we both put into the process and how much time we spend. It's just not going to happen. And there are other people who come to the piano hardwired to play it, essentially, but they still need some practice in order to get good at it. Where the actual truth lies, I don't know, but there is undoubtedly improvement to be had by having a go and practicing. And I always say one of the primary ways I got better was by writing short stories. I think the way you get better at writing is by actually writing, and having people give you feedback on it. And the amount that you can gain from videos like this, and reading about it, there's some gain to be made there, but actually getting out and doing it is the thing that you should be doing. So yeah, and I was a grown man when I did this, and probably around about 30. That was a 55,000 word book. So let's just pitch into it. I'll read it through once, and then I will go through it with my comments. And the book was called Hate Fire. The cottage lay in a wooded valley hemmed in by trees on every side, a small but sturdy construction of log and thatch lost in the darkness of the forest. The smoke issuing from the chimney caught the moonlight, a glowing serpent twisting into the heavens. Down below, the fire crackled in the hearth, the only light in a room of dancing shadows. Dale and his younger brother Isaiah burrowed deeper into the folds of their mother's robe as the story reached its climax. And through the night they came with burning eyes and hatred in their hearts. Isaiah, at 6, was wholly taken up with the tale, his eyes wide, his small hands knotted in his brother's tunic. His mother's stories always ended happily, and he knew that at any minute now the prince would step in to save the day. But right now these comforting thoughts were pushed to the back of his mind. Alina gathered her boys closer still, paused to wink at her youngest, then continued. The closest village to the cottage where Alina Mara held her sons enthralled with the old sagas was the small hamlet of True. Amongst a score of buildings huddled around the marsh trail, True boasted a single tavern and it was in this place of light and warmth that David Hoole was sitting when the lizard walked in. A door to the street opened, and the lizard stooped to enter, its mail jingling. A ripple of silence spread across the room, killing conversation. David's hand sought the hilt of his sword instinctively, then fell away, a snarl of frustration on the warrior's lips. I'm not going to do a hissy sort of lizard voice here. Mara, we seek Mara's home. The lizard leaned over the bar, thrusting its black scaled snout too close to the barkeep's own pale face. Not round here, you want to try the next valley east. The crimson tongue flickered out to taste the air. The lizard turned slowly to scan the drinkers with its soulless gaze, and then strode purposefully from the smoky room. Out in the street, a second lizard was waiting patiently. In one taloned hand, it held the reins of a large grey horse, upon which sat a tall man wrapped against the chill of the night in a deep blue robe trimmed with ermine. The man's face was angular as if struck from flint, and his eyes were chips of sapphire in the moonlight. So there you have it, page 1. So yes, that first line, it's not really very grabby, is it? It's long, it's wordy, and it's pretty dull. It's not a line I would write now. It's not junk, but it's, let's just broaden this. A lot of the page 1s I've critiqued from writers starting in the process, like this one, are not terrible. But the thing is that in order to succeed in writing, if that's what was your goal, to sort of sell lots of books, being not terrible is not sufficient. And it's like those singing contests with the X Factor or American Idol, and they roll out every year scores of young people who are brilliant at singing, and yet almost none of them will have a career in singing. Almost none of them will make a living, even though their talent is, up in the top 1% and maybe even up in the top 0.1%. And so simply to be decent at singing, not even the level of these contestants who will not succeed, is hiding to nothing in terms of making a living. You can have fun, you can entertain friends and family, but you will not get people to put their hands in their pocket and part with money to come to your concert or read your book. And so the point here is that this may be serviceable in some senses, but you really need to take it to the next level if you're going to engage people to the degree that they're going to let you make a living out of this, for example. So yeah, one of the bad things about this first line is it just goes on about trees. It's a wooded valley. It's hemmed in by trees. Well, yeah. And it's a cottage made of logs, a log cottage in a forest. And then we finish by saying the forest. So there's 4 mentions of the fact it's a forest. Basically, it's repetitive in a way, it's redundant in a way. And then the second line is this smoke twisting up into the heavens. It's a pretty enough line, but as I've said before, if you're going to occupy space on your front page, on your first page, just showing off your prose, in a sense, a bit like in Strange the Dreamer, Laini Taylor did that, but she's world class, and her prose makes you go, my God, I've got to read this book because it's so good. Where again, this is okay, but it's not going to rock anyone back on their chair and go, right, now I need to read the rest of it. So yes, and given that it's only moderately pretty, then it's not worth spending your second line on, I'm thinking. Down below in the half, fire crackling. Well, that's, there's smoke coming out the top, so we imagine there's a fire at the bottom, so maybe we could move more directly to what's going on. Then we see these 2 boys, and they're listening to a mother's story, and that's fine. In a sense, we could start there, but we still need something a bit more hooky for the first line. But and we're using an omniscient type of view. This is more of a cinematic opening where we're sort of the camera starts out outside the house and has now zoomed in inside the house. And okay, the woman is telling a story, and we get a bit of that story, but we're on page one. We're just starting my story, and we can't immediately dive into a secondary story. That just seems a bit of a complication. Have her telling the story, but maybe don't have an actual line from it. I don't know. I think, yeah, maybe don't have an actual line from it. And then more of this omniscient point of view, because we're bouncing into the thoughts and of this 6-year-old, but we're still not very deep in his thoughts, because his small hands, he wouldn't be thinking about his hands as small if they were his hands. If you were deeply in his point of view, they'd just be hands. But we do have some of his thoughts, because we got here that he knew that any minute, so we know things he knows. So the POV is sort of bumped into his head, but it's not deeply situated there. There's the storyline does serve in creating potentially a bit of foreshadowing that could, what's going on here, somehow be echoed in the story. That's kind of enough of a reading convention for it to work to some degree with the readers. And we get some sort of personality. The mother's winking at her boy, but oh yeah, and we bounced out of the child's POV almost immediately, because now we're describing the mother as Eleanor, so it can't be his thoughts, because he wouldn't be thinking of her with her first name. And then immediately from this cottage, we teleport to the nearby village. So it really is an omniscient point of view. We've dipped into the head of that child, and now we've bounced out again. And we're getting exposition. We're getting sort of information that comes from nowhere. This is the geography of the place is being fed to us, and we don't know who's telling us this. We're omniscient. We are, in a sense, the author. And this omniscient point of view is an older style of writing. This is probably the style of writing that I was much more familiar with when in the fantasy books that I was growing up with, but it has fallen out of favor to some degree at the moment. I would say it's fallen out of favor to a large degree at the moment. Very few people write this way now. The tight point of view writing is more engaging, and I think delivers emotion and excitement in a better way. So we're in this pub, and the door's open, and a lizard has come in. Someone commenting had said that this was confusing, and it is to a degree, I guess, that a lizard walks into a pub. Your mind may immediately go to the sort of small scurrying sort of lizard on the floor. But I think that illusion or potential misunderstanding is dealt with fairly swiftly, because the lizard is stooping to enter, so it's obviously big and door-shaped rather than quadruped, and its mail is jingling, so it's wearing armor. So I think most fancy readers' minds would go to a lizard man sort of creature at that point. And this stuff's okay, you know, there's potential for violence for some reason. This warrior is avoiding the violence, but is not happy about it. So there's questions being asked here. Why a big lizard in armor? That immediately poses a question, and then immediately after that, they're looking for the Mara home, and we've just been there, so we've got more questions. What do they want there? We've got some tension potentially. We've got these two little kids and the mummy and the story, and that's all sort of quite cute and cozy. And we've got this lizard man thing that is obviously not very popular with the humans, and it's going there. This may end badly, so that's a bit of tension and some questions. We've got some dialogue, and again, the dialogue reinforces the fact the idea that this lizard man is not a nice creature. And then we go out into the street and we've got some baddie. So the lizard man gets less description than this guy. So this guy would seem to be the focus of the badness, maybe. But there's way too much description of this anonymous person on page 1 here. All of this sort of I always pick people up on using too many and redundant adjectives. These aren't redundant, but they're probably too many at this point. A large grey horse. I mean, I'm getting into the story. I don't really care what the colour of his horse is. You do want to put some details in to create an atmosphere, but you know, a deep blue robe. Again, that's doubling up adjectives, and with a lot of adjectives in this line, and do we really need them? And then even more information about him. It's trimmed with ermine. His face was angular. There's chips of sapphire in the moonlight. It's just a bit slightly overwritten, but also just the focus is wrong. It's stopping here to give me a detailed set of stuff about this as yet nameless individual, when really the story is about the children in the cottage and the imminent threat to them. And I really don't care about the clothes that the baddie is wearing or the color of his eyes. So yes, I think the main complaint I have here is the omniscient point of view. I just don't like it. I would think that you could construct something much better and tighter using the specific point of view of the child, and start in the cottage, stay in the cottage, spend a little bit of time building up those interactions between the family, just to make us think nice family, shame if something happened to them, and then have that door kicked in and those lizards come through with the guy behind them. The threat's then immediate. We've kept a tight point of view. We don't need to teleport over to the tavern and get some stuff there. It's all a continuous thing that's now posing a lot of questions and threat. And I think that would be the way to go. It's not a terrible first page, but no one would ever publish it. And unequivocally, that the 25 years of practice I've had since then have improved my writing considerably. But would anyone coming cold to the page do a what am I trying to say here? I think I'm just saying that it wasn't terrible, and that I've always had some degree of talent for writing, and that there is some truth in the thing, in that debate about learning versus innate skill. There certainly is some portion of the end product that was always there for, I think, for writers that you want to read, but also there's a large amount of improvement that can be made through practice. So I think anyone who feels that they have some talent for writing certainly shouldn't be discouraged by looking at what they can produce now and saying this isn't as good as what's in the books I'm reading, because you can put in the time and get there if you have some leaning in that direction. And that's it. I think we will stop doing these page ones and focus on other things. And if I get loads of people going, no more page ones, then maybe we'll come back to it, but not in the near future. Thank you very much, and see you next video.